Digital audio health by Cymatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has she been inspired by a calling, crafted her journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversation and to use it to help you to recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Dowling, who is a filmmaker, best-selling author, artist, CMO of Raver Magazine, Firestarter. Welcome to the show, Dar.
Thanks, Rhonda, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited.
Yes, it's wonderful to see you, my friend. Can you let the audience know a little bit about your background and where you're living right now?
I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York. I'm second generation Irish. My grandmother came over and settled in Staten Island. And then when I was in my early 20s, I ran away to Manhattan. So where I still live.
And so
in the
you're
West
still,
Village.
Yeah, so you're still in Manhattan. You are quite an artist. Do you want to talk? Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about your art? Because you do more than one thing, do you not?
Yeah, I'm a visual artist and a writer. So, I write books but I also make movies, and I also create line drawings, really big black and white ink on paper drawings. They're usually, some are smaller, but sometimes they're like 3 feet by 5 feet. And they can take me up to like a year to create, depending on what my mood is like, I guess.
Well, sometimes we have to wait for inspiration, right?
Well, yeah, and they're tiny lines. So my thing is, I guess I use the human body to hold the art in place, but the inside is, I guess, my version of controlled chaos, and it could remind some people of some tribal drawings or indigenous things, or it can also be, I kind of am very into qigong and Chinese medicine, and so in a lot of ways it reminds me of like the energy flow within the human body. So
and are those drawings, are they usually black and white, or
they're black and white? Yeah, black and white, but every once in a while I'll throw some color in. It's rare, but every once in a while there'll be some red or something. Because I was in a mood.
Because you're in the mood. And so do you do anything with chakras, or is it?
No, they're just I don't even know sometimes what like what's happening inside the figures until I step away, and then I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting pattern that I made. Or I've been getting ready to do some art shows in 2024. So I've been going to the printer a lot, going through some old stuff, and the one I took to the printer yesterday was very different than the other ones I've worked on, or my newer ones. And I was like, oh, I really like that one pattern. I should try to integrate it again into other things. But I was surprised. So I surprised myself going through my own artwork, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's inspiring because art to me is evolutionary. As you grow, your art grows.
Yeah, and I used to think I needed to have a muse to create things, and this year I realized I don't. And it was a very emotionally evocative summer for me. One of my favorite people died, my aunt died, and then my cat died, all within like 90 days of each other. And I felt like in that moment, like my grief became my muse. It became my inspiration so because I do so many things, sometimes my actual ink on paper art might wait, right? It's been very healing for me during this last bunch of months. So, and there's a lot of empty space now inside of me. And I feel like the tiny lines in my artwork and the patterns I'm creating are like filling those spaces. And I'm sure the universe is going to fill those spaces with other things too. So, but we'll see. We'll see. More will be revealed.
Yes. Well, and those types of things that happen in people's lives serve our art sometimes.
Yes, I think so. I'm really enjoying the new drawing I'm doing. I think it's coming. It's pretty beautiful. So for
Yeah.
me, anyway.
Uh-huh.
So
It
um,
is.
and I'm pouring all my feelings into it. So it's a good experience out of a sad time for me. Right. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
so do you make prints of these once they're completed?
I have in the past. I've been holding on to my art for quite some time. And only recently, a friend of mine wants to help me, a very good, dear friend of mine wants to help me get my art out into the world more. And he asked me if I was ready. And so it was last weekend, I was in
Yes.
Canada, and I was like, all right, I'm going to mull that over while I'm away in
Uh-huh.
the woods of Canada, which is not really the woods of Canada, but I'm a city girl. So to me,
Yes.
Oshawa is where I was in northern, or not even in Ontario,
In
and
Eastern. Yeah.
Eastern Ontario, right? So
Yeah.
I mulled it over, and I came back and I did a meditation, and in the meditation, I was like, I want to be seen, and it's probably the first time in my life that. And part of seeing me means seeing this aspect of my art, my drawing. So that's a yes then. It's
Yes. And I have read in different places, and I know of people who it takes a lot of confidence to share a part of you that's dear to you, your artwork, with the world. And some people never do. They keep it hidden away and locked away. And as a new writer, when I wrote my book, I had very big reservations about publishing that book with my name on it because of everybody. I have a pretty big following, and people would know then about me. And I'm a very private person. And the fact that people were going to know about my background and my stories and my evolution to where I had my near death experience and how that changed me and my perspective of my life made me really nervous. And people just opened their arms to me and they loved it. And they just were fascinated that I had a near death experience. And then I wrote about it and shared it. And so once you do it once, it's a little bit easier to do it the second time, right?
yep, it's true,
Yeah.
very true.
But
And by
you
the way, I
are,
love your book. I love your book, by the way. I was
thank,
rereading it during the week, and it's pretty awesome.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. But you as well, you are an author of books and you are a best-selling author.
Yes, yes, I was lucky enough that people enjoyed my books when I put them out. I have two books. One is called The Book of Darku, which incorporates a little bit of my art with my photographs. And then during COVID, I couldn't finish some films I was working on. So I took a lot of photos. And then I also wrote these haikus that aren't really haikus, which is why they're called darkus. They're like tiny poems.
Yes.
And yeah, so
So what
yeah,
was
and
your inspiration for that book?
I'm not really sure.
Uh-huh.
I think it was the boredom of COVID, maybe. It's hard to
Yes.
say. And also it was like the cover of the book is a piece of my artwork too. So I think it was the beginnings of me wanting that aspect of myself to be seen. And I had a lot of internal emotional stuff going on. And when I was young, I used to write a lot of poems, and I think returned to that aspect of my art during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's about it. And then I worked with a great designer, and I'm like, what do you think we can do? And we came up with some very cool images for the interior of the book. It's a short book, but I think there's another one I'm gonna try to push out by the end of the year. With more haikus, more photos, different art, and see how that goes.
Well, that's awesome that you're able to incorporate your writing, your poems, and your art, because a lot of people have to have illustrators, do that for them. And so you're a multi-talented artist. But, you talked about the pandemic or COVID, and a lot of artists were born during that time.
It's true. It's
Because
true.
when we have to go home and we're not out in the world, we're only going out to do the necessary things like groceries. We spend a lot of time with ourselves, and in spending time with ourselves, this is when this starts bubbling up, and then all of a sudden you have a book, and you published a book, but you have a second one. Talk to us about the second book that you have.
So it's a children's book, chapter book. I wrote it. It's called Kayla and the Magic Dog.
Yes.
And I wrote it about 10 years ago, maybe more. My niece used to call me Aunt Hare when she was very young. And I decided, and I used to go, I adore my niece and my nephew. So I used to, every week I would go to Staten Island where they are and, go to different events. And they would also have like a night, a mommy and kids night at McDonald's. So we would all go, and I would meet their friends, and I would play with them and get to know their friends and their friends' moms and my sister's friends. So I always enjoyed that. And I think something about that time was a catalyst for me to want to write a story and incorporate pieces of that experience, I guess, into that. So I wrote it, and then I put it aside. And about earlier this year, I have a friend I decided I wanted to try to publish it, because then I realized I had some stories that I had put away and not looked at again. So I was like, oh, I have a friend who's a school teacher, and I was like, can you look at my story and see what you think? And she's like, it's a beautiful story. And she really was the first believer in that story. And it meant a lot to me, because she's a very picky person, and she wouldn't say anything she didn't mean. So then she's like, but you need to edit it, because sometimes I have a loose relationship with grammar and structure. So she said she would help me. And so it began a process of her helping me to get that into shape. And at one point, she's like, you don't have a hard ending. You need an ending. And I had to go back 3 times with an actual ending. And then finally I got it. She's like, all right, finally. But apparently I didn't want the story to end. But I've had people tell me now there could be a series. And so I'm thinking about the next book. But also I released it 4 days. My friend's sister, Judy Belisano, died like 4 days before my birthday. And on June 9th and on June 13th, was my birthday, and I released my book. And there's a shout out to her and my Aunt Joan in the beginning of the book, because they were 2 very inspirational people for me. Because my aunt, and when she was 89 or 87, wrote her first book, and we got illustrations, and she released it and became a best-selling author too. So I feel like I'm following in her footsteps a bit. And Sister Judy was a best-selling author and a very powerful person in the world who she was a Dominican nun who did ayahuasca in the rainforest and found God and wrote some books, and there's a movie, and she was the sister of my heart. So I feel like on that day, like there was a lot going on, and I actually became a best-selling author right after that. So I feel like they, all that love I got really helped me through that period.
Oh, yes. And surrounding yourself with people who really appreciate your work and appreciate you and where you're going. And often I say, we really sometimes don't recognize our messengers until we look back and see how they guided us in our path. And Sister Judy, she was very beneficial to you as an artist, I thought. Now, did she talk to you at all about any visions or anything that she experienced during one of her ayahuasca encounters, like trips?
She did. I can't really recount it, whatever. It was more like her seeing her how she had been before that experience and how she wanted to be going forward. So in that first, she literally did ayahuasca in the rainforest with shamans, right? So it was and she also was on a crutch because she had hurt herself. So she's like, it's late 70s, going going deep into the rainforest and
Hmm.
had this experience, and it changed her. And she did subsequent ayahuasca trips, but I think that one was the most, it changed her life. And she used to tell me I should go and do it. And I'm like, no, thank you. Psychedelics scare me. So she thought I was a baby. But I
Yeah.
was like, no, I don't think so. But I always respected that she did that. And her movie and her book are amazing. So if anybody's out there, it's called Sister Jaguar's Journey. And actually, before she died, she released a kid's book too. And so, I was surrounded. And I have to say, my aunt was probably, I used to talk to her all the time about when I was getting the kids' book ready. And
Hmm.
she was a great inspiration, but also really a great support for me through that process.
Yes.
And, she's like a second mother to me. I adored my mother, and she died about 20 years ago. And my Aunt Joan, really, she was like a second mother to me. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to get so emotional. Geez.
Oh,
Um,
no, I love it. Yeah.
and she was probably one of the most generous, amazing, kind-hearted people I've ever met. And she
Hmm.
did a lot of work with veterans. We're coming up on
Oh, yes.
Veterans Day, and
Yeah.
she did a lot of work to help them and support them and raise money for them. And they all super appreciated it. One time, there's a veterans motorcycle organization called Rolling Thunder, and they brought all their motorcycles to her house. And
Oh,
yeah, they rolled up to honor her,
yeah.
and it was amazing. There were so many, and it was such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I got it on video, so sometimes I like to watch it because she looks so happy. They look so happy. There's so much mutual respect between them, and
Mm.
you know, so there's a lot of love in my life, and I'm really blessed. Like with
Oh,
those
yes.
two women, really, they were in my life as long as they were,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I still feel them around. So, there's that.
Yes. Well, and if she did the journeys that she did with plant medicine, she's in touch at a higher level.
Sister
That's what
J.
my understanding. I've never done it, and I would never do it. I'm a baby when it comes to stuff like that.
Me too.
I wouldn't even go into a rainforest, let
It's pretty
alone,
hot in the rainforest. They were like, you
yeah,
could go to the rainforest and not do it. And I'm like, I don't like
no,
the heat. So I'm like, it's really hot in the rain. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not saying I'm never gonna go, but
yes.
like it was not like on my top of my list. I'd rather go into the depths of Alaska than go
Yes.
to
Yeah.
the rainforest.
Well, I'd have heat stroke and exhaustion stroke. People would have to carry me, you know.
It'd be like, Rhonda, you'd be a lot of work. They'd be like, oh my
I would
God.
be I would be too much work. I'd have to have the comfort of life, so they'd have to bring that with them, and I can't afford it.
No, it's true.
I can't
It's a
afford the
lot.
experience. I can't afford the experience. Talking about experiences like that, have you ever been to a place where there's an energy vortex, like let's say Sedona, or there's some in Virginia? Have you ever went there to
I
improve your art and get in touch that way?
I have not. I think next year I'm going to go to Sedona
Uh-huh.
because a good friend of mine goes there all the time, and another good friend I had told me a while ago. She's like, you really need to go there and
Hmm.
experience that for yourself. Lately, I've always been very into. When I was 9, this boy held me and this girl beat me up and they threw me down the hill, and
Oh
my father
no.
took me to. My father was like, "Oh no!" So there was a karate school that had just opened, and my father um, took me there to start training. And I cried. He took me home and he called the guy and he said, and the guy was just who became my sensei. He said, "No, why you take her home? Just leave her." And so I spent uh, the next bunch of up until my early 20s in that karate school learning,
Yes.
but it really resonated with me, the whole karate martial arts. But then as I got older, it turned into yoga too, but also Tai Chi. I studied with a woman called Maggie Newman for 10 years, who is a Tai Chi master. And that had really opened me up and helped me with my art too. And more recently, I've been doing a lot of qigong with studying with Robert Pang. So I feel like those things really enhance my art, whether it's line drawings or my writing or my films.
Yes. And what does it help you get confidence? Karate would have been confidence, building your confidence, right?
It was confidence, managing anxiety. Also,
Yes.
there's a lot going on in my world at that time, so it gave me a sense of stability.
Right.
It taught me about discipline. I learned a lot of things. So
and then, yeah, it's very enriching. And then when you're studying with Robert Pang with Qigong, is that at a higher level? Is it a different type? I don't really know that art.
Qigong there's a martial arts aspect, but there's a healing aspect, and he teaches the healing aspect. So I like 15 years ago, I used to go to workshops of his in person, and then I started doing Tai Chi, so that fell off. And then this last year, I needed to get myself right, I guess, spiritually. So I looked him up, and I found out he had a lot of things online, like videos and stuff. And so I started doing those, and it helped me. And then I decided then he also teaches Zoom, like classes. I joke, it's probably the only thing I like to do on Zoom are his classes. And now your podcast, but in general, it's not my favorite.
Yes.
So, but it's really, I forgot what the question was. What was the question, Rhonda?
Well, I was just wondering, does it open up? You're talking about it's emotional and more spiritual, but does it open up? Because I know for me, when I'm writing, and it doesn't matter if I'm writing a chapter in a book or a poem or just short things that I, put on my social media, is that my brain needs to be in a special place. And the world takes that away from me because, we need to make a living. And I get caught up in the day-to-day work that I do. And I love it when the weekend comes because I try and push that aside and just allow my brain to drop into where it needs to be in order for me to create. The older I get, the more confidence I have that that's what I need, is my brain needs to be free of the day-to-day things that I usually do in order for me to get in touch with the true essence of who I am that I want to share with the world, which is my art. And so I just wondered, because I haven't taken any classes, I haven't went to Sedona to the energy vortex, but I did fly fixed wing over the Grand Canyon when I was around 34, and I had a mystical experience. I wasn't an artist at the time. I didn't know. I knew I was an artist, but I had not developed anything other than playing guitar and singing. And so I'm flying fixed wing over the Grand Canyon. I'm looking down and I see all of the lines of evolution that has gotten us to this place, for me looking down on it. And I had all this information come into my brain. People call it a download. I don't really like to refer it as that. It was just that my brain was in tune with that. And I was so mystified, and I just couldn't wait to write it down. But did I have a pen and paper? No, I didn't have anything with me. I just had probably just a wallet or something. And by the time I got back to the hotel, it was wiped away. So I do believe, and I do know that I am open to that type of energy, because that is part of an energy vortex, the Grand Canyon. So I'm excited and looking forward to going to Sedona, because I really feel that that is going to really open up and allow me to express myself at a level that I haven't yet. And so I wondered if the teachings that you were having is helping you bring more of what you came here to do to your reality, like your art.
Yes, yes, I would say definitely. I feel like it helps me get more in tuned and bypass. Like, my brain is very active. I'm a Gemini.
Yes, I know you. Yes, I saw that.
I'm a Gemini with Aquarius rising and a Scorpio moon. So I have a friend who's a astrologer, and she's like, and she does yoga, and she's like, well, don't worry. A lot of the swamis have very complicated charts too. I'm like, that doesn't really make me feel better, really,
No.
but not at all. But it just means I'm pretty complicated, and my mind is very busy. So it does
Yes.
help me to get past the stuff that's going on in my brain and tap into my higher self. So
Yes.
I don't know if that's your
That's what I'm
soul or
yeah.
my that energy, whatever that is. So it helps me get to that place and to maintain that place and to see, more like the things that used to really bother me or upset me a lot less or not at all now. And also when I do get upset, I can see what, like, every people are annoying. Life is, there's stuff that
Yeah.
happens, right?
The
Work gets
stuff
you
that
crazy,
happens.
like,
Yeah.
you know, and so I'll be like, ugh, I'll be so like annoyed about something, but then I'll be like, well, really, is it really that important? Then what's really going on here? Is it really this, right? So it helps me sort through that and then get to that place where I have clarity and calmness and maybe find the joy in the day. Right now I'm doing a 14-week everyday Qigong practice for physical, spiritual, and emotional transformation. And every
Yes.
week is a different, like every Saturday is the main workshop, and then it's like an hour. And then every day it's like another half hour of like practice and
Mm-hmm.
meditation. And you learn different breathing techniques and things that I hadn't learned before. And I like it. And every week is about a different thing. Like my cat died in mid-September, and I started the workshop the week after. And the first
Uh-huh.
exercise was about turning grief into kindness,
Ah.
and I really needed that. So I just thought it was very fortuitous or lucky or universal flow that for me that's how it started. And every
Yes.
week is a different thing. So it's a different, in qigong, like, and in Chinese medicine, each organ has its like characteristics or energies. So every week we do a different one. And so I don't know, I feel like and it ends on New Year's Eve, which I think is cool. So it's like it starts a new
Yes.
year. And I do feel the changes inside myself, and I'm getting more clarity about things, and I'm more of a sense of joy about things, and being able to let things go a little bit easier than I did before. And anytime I do these kind of things, I feel like that's, it pushes me in a better direction. And then that manifests in my art. Right now I'm editing a movie too. And so
Yes.
it's helping with that. So it's all part of the whole package, I guess.
Yes, of course. Well, that's beautiful. I love that. And I love to learn about different things that we can do to help artists, to help us, anybody, land in the true essence of who they are, why they came here is, and the more in touch we get with ourselves, I find the older we get, the more in touch we become with ourselves. And the more we surrender to things that we have no control over, helps us to help others, right? And
Yes.
that's what I love. That's what I love. And you've talked a couple of times, you've said a couple of times about one of my favorite words is kindness. And we have no idea how our kindness can affect a person and then affect their lives and the people in their lives, and how far reaching kindness can really be. And I think that the more we become in tune with the true essence of ourselves, the more kindness we have towards others. Because when we become gentle with ourselves and we allow ourselves to be who we really are, it allows us then to allow others and not struggle against other people and their journeys, because that's just their journey. And really their journey is none of our business, right?
No,
And
it's
if we're
true.
kind to others, I think that it's changing the world, really. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
um
And it definitely ripples out, right? So
it ripples out. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Symatrex. And today I am speaking with a friend of mine, Dowling. Can you let the audience know where they could reach out to you if they were interested in your art? Do you have a website right now?
I have a website. It's called Dharma Productions,
Yes.
Darma, and then productions.com. And the reason it's called that is because I was on a train with a friend of mine who had a dental surgery, and he was high from the anesthesia.
Yes.
And I grabbed him by his scarf and I pulled him over because he started going to try to just
Tip
talk to
over.
people. And then he goes, Dharma, stop. And so I was like, so then I decided I should name my production company Dharma. So,
Nice.
because I thought it was cute.
Yes, it's very sweet. And so with your production company, what are you doing right now with that?
So we're finishing up a movie called Hinene, and it's about a transgender man who, after he converted from female to male, decided he wanted to convert to conservative Judaism.
Uh-huh.
So I followed him for a year during that process, and it was a very, very compelling, interesting process because, they had to think a lot about his gender and what, Judaism is very gender specific, and they had to figure out what they would do in terms of, the rituals that are involved. And so it was a very interesting process. I followed him for like a year doing that. Um,
Yes.
and now it's 4 years later and we're finishing up. Documentaries sometimes take a while to finish.
Oh,
So,
they take a long time. Yes.
but I also did another short about him called Double Take. So it was about his take on male privilege because, he had lived Moshe had lived as a woman and lived as a man, and he had
Yes.
worked in construction most of his life. So he had some very interesting things to say about that. So that movie went to the Montreal Film Festival earlier in the year, and we had a billboard in Times Square. So that was pretty cool. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah. So you can find out more about my books on that website too. I try to have like a central hub. My artwork, I have a website, but I'm rebooting it. So more to come
Yes.
on that.
More to come. And you're also have a new documentary in mind, or have you began your new one?
There was one I started before COVID. It's about human trafficking,
Uh-huh.
and but we'll see where that goes. I want to finish this first, and then
Yes.
we'll have to resume that probably next year too. So
Your
we'll see how
ta
that goes.
Yeah, your talents are so great. I am so glad that you are joining me today. We're discussing your art, and so the audience is getting to know about you. And I hope that you get more followers from this as well. So, two questions I always ask my guests.
Okie doke.
Do you feel that you've been called to your journey, crafted it, or a bit of both?
I kind of feel like I was born this way because
Yes.
when I was a kid, I was always drawing or writing, and I don't think I know any other way to be in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's a calling, but then I've had to, I don't know if I've crafted it so much as just followed what that part of myself wants to do next,
Yes. Yes.
if that
And
makes sense.
well, yes, and that's when I look back over my life and I see how my life has went, all of it seems to have been scripted. And when I got in the way is when things didn't go so good for me, well for me. So when I had other ideas about my life, I kept on having accidents to bring me back, and to get in touch, more in touch, more in touch. And so, but I mean, it's all of our journeys are not easy. I think that's why they call
No.
it life. you know,
Yes. Life is
it's
not easy and the journey isn't easy. And
no, but the thing is when we get to a certain point, we start to figure it out. And when we start to look back on our past, we start to realize that some of this was really scripted for us. And this is why we've come here.
yeah, when I look back, I don't have any regrets because any turns and anything that's happened has really actually pushed me in the direction I needed to go. So
Exactly. Yeah, I was shoved.
I was shoved often,
Yeah,
sometimes
I
with
was.
a universal foot on my butt.
Yeah,
But yes,
yeah.
yes.
And so, for audience members who are listening right now, if you are having some really weird things going on in your life, you might want to take heed of what message is behind that, because sometimes it's not until you're out of that you look back and you realize. So it's really good to take a look back on your life. What extraordinary experiences have you had in your life, or what extraordinary experience have you had in your life?
What do you mean by extraordinary exactly?
Well, do you remember something that was so extraordinary that it has stayed with you for many years? For instance, when I had my T-bone, I was hit at 90 kilometers an hour, as you know, or 55 miles an hour, and did not have a scratch on me. And I was released from the hospital within hours of going in there. And that's when the area my brain was in at the time was that creative process. And I started to write about my past. So for me, that was the most extraordinary thing that happened in my life, because it set my course. And when I wrote that book and about my life opened up to me. Opportunities opened up that never would have opened up to me. So to me, that was an extraordinary discovery that I made in my life. It happened to me, but it was still, I discovered myself in the recovery from that.
When I was in my early 20s, I had my own battle with addiction and had to surrender at certain points to get help. And I think that probably for me was an extraordinary event, because I don't think I would have, if I hadn't gone through that and then come out the other side, and I'm not sure I would have been alive, let alone been able to do the things that I've been able to do. So yeah, I guess that's it, I would say.
Wonderful. Yes.
And then I have a lot of love in my life. So I think that every time I can accept that into my heart, because sometimes it's hard to remember that people love you, and that when I accept that into my life, that's a tiny extraordinary moment for me, because I don't think that I've always been able to do that. And then when I can do that, then it also helps with my creative process.
Yes, it helps with your creative process. Well, that's wonderful. It's a great teaching too for others. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today and with the audience. I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy all aspects of your art. I just think it's fascinating. So I thank you so much for spending time with me today. And
I just wanted to say I'm really grateful to be on your show. It's my first podcast, and I feel really blessed by the whole experience. So thank you so much for having me on the show, because it's been awesome.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.
Digital audio health by Cymatrax.